Yeah.
So thank you very much for joining me this evening at this first equity event. As you can see in front of us, we just have the disclaimer. I'll leave it up there for a few seconds for everybody to read. Tonight, I'm going to talk you through the latest from the Kalahari Suture Zone and some quite significant changes that we've made in our business over recent months. A lot's been going on at Kavango. This evening's operations update gives a hint as to, well, not a hint, it actually describes a number of the changes we've made with new senior personnel coming in. So I'll be talking through a lot of what's happening at Kavango, and in particular, obviously, the latest from the Suture Zone, Kalahari Suture Zone. So what we have up in front of us, this is our cap table and obviously our share price performance. This is a presentation, so this is a slide that we always use in our presentations just to sort of give an overview of the business now. Obviously, our share price took quite a hit about a month or so ago when we put the first RNS out. As we've said, our policy is to report anything that we felt was price sensitive. The first announcement we put out at the end of the first hole, we did think that the market reaction was a bit over the top. We saw the price sort of fall quite dramatically, which for at that point was an RNS sort of that wasn't too definitive at that stage because there's still a lot more testing that needs to be done. Now, it's worthwhile saying that we're still going to do assay testing on the rocks and the core samples that we retrieved. There was a little bit of disquiet in the market about our inability to do downhole EM. We couldn't do that because challenging drilling conditions meant that we had to case the first hole down to about 390 meters with steel casing. Our priority was always to extract drill core. That's what we needed. We needed the rock samples. And it's proving to be the case of drilling through the upper layers of Kalahari sands and sediments. The ground is very loose and there are expanding clays as well, which makes for sort of quite difficult drilling conditions. So for both of our holes that we've drilled so far, maintaining the integrity of the hole has been the biggest priority to enable us to get to our target depths. And we're going to be sending all rock samples off to Johannesburg, to the ALS labs, which are internationally accredited for assay testing. So we did think sort of back in the summer, we got a bit unduly punished, but obviously after the news that we've had for the last week or so, share prices spiked back higher. We're trading roughly where we were previously. Now, we think this could well be a platform for future growth, but obviously at this stage, we do have to emphasize that all the results that we have, they are based on visual inspection at this stage with assay testing still to come. Now, before I get into the technical aspects of the project, I'd like to talk a bit about some of the improvements that we've made to Kavango's business model. Now, for everybody who's followed Kavango, you'll know that over the years, progress in the business has been a little on the slow side. I don't want to be overly critical of the guys who brought me in. I'm very grateful to Mike and Michael for the opportunity that they've given me in my career, but Kavango itself, it did need a little bit of a boost. Part of the reason for bringing me in, they knew about my entrepreneurial background, they knew about my market understanding, they also knew about my drive and determination and the energy that I would bring. I've got to say, over the last 8 months, there have been times when I think with the way that I've pushed the business, they found it quite difficult at times, quite challenging. But overall, we find ourselves now on a much, much stronger footing. We obviously raised £2 million back in July with first equity. And what I'd like to talk with you about this evening is how we're actually putting those funds to use. Now, a key part of our strategy is to develop a significant presence in Botswana. We believe the future for Kavango is as a world-class minerals exploration firm focused solely on projects in Botswana. Thanks to the presence of the Kalahari sands and the challenges that those have posed for historic exploration in the country, we feel that this presents a significant opportunity for a company like ours, which is very much led by its geophysical technology. Now, we've taken on at the start of August, Tips Ngwasani. Now, Tips has been at the Botswana Geological Survey since 1988. He rose through the ranks steadily. He became director of the BGS back in 2010. And in 2015, he became the founding CEO of the Botswana Geological Institute. I think you can honestly say there aren't many people in Botswana who have both as deep an understanding of the country's geology, but also its minerals exploration, the sort of the trading environment, including the legal setting, the political environment, and of course all the other operators and the major players in the region. Now, Hilary Gumbo, one of our founders, has developed a very close relationship with Tips over the years, and we made an approach to Tips back in May to join us. Now, he had to serve out a notice period, his contract was coming to an end, but he joined us about 7 weeks ago, and since he's come into the company, he's really had a transformational impact on our operations in country. So we brought him in as managing director of the local operating subsidiary, but this, in terms of sort of establishing our presence in Botswana, is a very, very significant hire. Now, alongside Tips is a contact that I made back in February through a contact of mine. John Lauderdale, we brought him in as our group consulting geologist. John's now our man on the ground in Botswana. He's a resident of Zambia. He is British. He's got an extensive portfolio under his belt of major exploration projects from Morocco to South Africa, as we've said in the RNS. He really is, he's very well regarded in exploration circles throughout Africa because of the work that he's done. He's worked for major companies such as Ivanhoe and has been part of teams sort of behind significant discoveries. Now, John came to visit us in England in May. He did his 10 days quarantine at the hotel as required, because obviously Zambia is a red list. Before we took John on, because it was obviously going to be a major hire for us, we wanted to meet him face to face. So I spent 4 days with him back in May. We talked a lot, obviously, about the strategy for Kavango. I got to know him a bit, and it was a really good opportunity to look him in the eyes and feel confident that this was the right man for the job. So John joined us officially towards the end of May when he went back to Botswana, initially as just as a consultant, just to help us with our operations. But what became clear was that our actual internal operations in the country, they actually did need quite a lot of work. So we took John on a full-time role. We've given him a number of options as well. So John is fully committed into the business. And so far, again, he's made a really significant impact. He's plugged a lot of the gaps that were already present, identified a number of areas for improvement, and has already started recruitment in country for bringing new talent into the company. Now, our procedures, our operating processes are already sort of significantly better as a result of John's day-to-day involvement. So he's a really, really strong hire for us, and he gives us that permanent presence on the ground at our projects that is something that's been a bit lacking for Kavango in the past. Finally, there's Jeremy Brett. Now, Jeremy was introduced to me back in March. I hadn't actually appreciated when I first got to know Jeremy quite how much or how extensive his experience of working in the Kalahari Suture Zone was. He was recommended as a geophysicist who had worked on the KSZ previously, back about 20 years ago, and had obviously had a lot of experience in Botswana as well. So he's also worked in the Copper Belt. But it subsequently turned out that Jeremy wrote a seminal paper on exploration in the KSZ, which we've got the title here, this geophysical exploration of the Kalahari Suture Zone, from his experience of working with a Canadian junior company that drilled the GRS-1 hole, which I'll be talking a bit later on in this presentation. So Jeremy's experience for us has been invaluable. He's introduced us to a number of his contacts around the world who've helped us with our third-party verification of our data. And he's currently conducting quite an extensive review of our geophysical strategy. So the work that Hilary Gumbo has done, who's been taking the lead on our geophys so far, has been great. But of course, it's just been Hilary working on his own with a number of consultants. By having Jeremy now in the company, Jeremy brings a completely new perspective and a new lease of life to our geophysical strategy, and he's providing Hilary with a great deal of assistance. And so far, again, we've seen a huge impact from Jeremy in terms of so his positive contribution to the company, some of which I'll talk about specifically in a moment. So very quickly, you probably are aware of what the Kalahari Suture Zone is, but in case you're not, I always include this slide at the start of presentations. So the KSZ was first discovered in the 1970s by a Canadian aid program that flew a series of regional aeromagnetic surveys over the country. And what was discovered was this 450-kilometre long magnetic anomaly that you can see here that sits right on the western edge of the Kapval Craton in southwest Botswana. Now, it caused a lot of excitement at the time because it was felt that the signatures from this anomaly and its position, its tectonic position, were very, very notably similar to the Norilsk mining centre in northern Russia, which sits on the western edge of the Siberian Craton. So there was quite a lot of excitement at the time, but subsequent exploration identified that the main source, the primary source of the magnetics of the KSZ was the Proterozoic. So although there was historic exploration, the feeling was that the targets were too deep for exploration. That's not to say that they were too deep for economic mineralization, but the challenge was more about the availability of remote sensing technology that could identify viable drill targets. It's all well and good having a huge system like this, but unless you're able to identify specific areas to go and put the drill bit in the ground, you could end up drilling tens, if not hundreds of thousands of meters of holes before you hit anything. So although there was historic exploration and a number of major companies did look at the KSZ, it was really overlooked as there was lower hanging fruit to discover elsewhere. So when Mike Moles and Hilary Gumbo, our two co-founders, set Kavango up in 2012, they felt, under Hilary's guidance in particular, that remote sensing technology had advanced sufficiently that it would be possible to open up this region. Now, obviously, that's been our main goal, and we've been driven by this model that we've published, regularly, this Norilsk model. Now, what we've been looking for in the KSZ, in the Karoo age gabbros, these gabbros that are about 180 million years old, are these very characteristic keel and gull wing formations. So what you're looking at here is a schematic of one of the Norilsk sills and keels, which has this very characteristic, very concentrated ore bodies towards the bottom of the keel. So our primary exploration focus has been looking for these Karoo-aged keels, but of course, after the announcement last week, this whole exploration strategy has taken an extremely interesting turn, and there's been quite a twist of events that I'll be talking about in a moment. So what we have here is our original 3D underground model of the KSZ. And what we were particularly excited by was we felt we'd identified in the Karoo system a number of these very characteristic keels with sills. Now, so far it's looking like some of our original estimates in target area A, the modelling hasn't quite matched the drill results that have come in the Karoo, but in the Proterozoic, we've actually, to be perfectly frank, have got incredibly lucky. We deliberately drilled the Proterozoic, but the actual results that we've seen far surpassed our expectations at this level, and I'll walk you through sort of exactly why that is in a moment. So as things stand today, the reason I'm leaving this slide up is that this model is still alive and well. We're moving on to target area B, and this is still the model that we're pursuing as our primary exploration target in target area B. But before we look at that, let's just consider for a moment like what we've actually discovered so far. So at the second hole that we've drilled in target area A, we encountered at 651 meters Proterozoic gabbro. Now, the Proterozoic gabbros are much older than the Karoo age gabbros. They're about 1.1 billion years old. And although they represented the primary exploration target for historic exploration in the region, the shallowest depth that the Proterozoic was encountered at in the KSZ was at about 900 meters. So that's why it was felt to be out of range. What we've just done with our latest drill is we've encountered the Proterozoic at 650 meters, and not only that, we've hit this incredibly altered, discolored rock, which is giving us a lot of indicators as to what might be going on within the Proterozoic system. And we've hit a lot of this rock too. So far, we've recovered the most Proterozoic that any firm has ever recovered. And we've also managed to get down to a deeper depth than anyone has managed before. So what you're looking at here is a sample of rock taken from, I think it's about 685 meters. You can see the very clear discoloration. Now, that's important for two reasons. What it tells us is, first of all, when this magma was in a fluid state, there was a lot that was going on geochemically. So you're looking for rocks that have been altered because you're looking for processes that would have occurred while the rocks were in fluid state that could have enabled the creation of mineralized zones and mineralization. If you think in terms of this being like a giant mixing bowl with all of the various elements sort of being swirled around in this great flow and then obviously solidifying over time. So that's obviously is an interesting indicator for us. At this stage, we can't draw any firm conclusions on it because although we're looking at feldspars, for example, in this rocks, until we've done the whole rock assay testing and the full sweep analysis, we can't actually say for certain exactly what has gone on. But so far, in terms of the visual inspection, it looks very encouraging. And we've also seen clearly visible elements of chalcopyrite. Now, chalcopyrite is significant because chalcopyrite is copper sulfide. So we know that copper sulfides were being formed in this area, throughout this zone in the Proterozoic. But at the moment, obviously, there's still quite a long way for us to go before we can start, talking about, potential deposits and future drill targets. Now, the second reason that these rocks are very interesting is that we have this very coarse grain material. Now, the reason that that matters is what that suggests is that the magma at different levels, different layers, cooled over long periods of time. So if you consider this sort of geochemical process where you've had this process that can lead to the creation of mineralization, the second ingredient, sorry, the lights have just gone off. The second ingredient that's very important is the coarse grain, sorry, is the speed at which the magma cools down. So the slower the magma cooled down, the greater the chance of the magmatic sulfides sinking in the system and pooling together in these hopefully economic deposits that we're looking for. So in terms of the macro conditions, sort of the environmental factors that we're looking at, we've encountered clear visible alteration and clearly coarse-grained rocks throughout the entire hole so far. So far, so good in terms of the environment, but of course, we now need to follow up with assay testing so that we can really fully analyse exactly what we've encountered. Now, this photo is from 683 meters, as you can see. Again, clear signs of visible alteration. But what you also have here are possible chromite specks possible chromite with specks of chalcopyrite. Now, I've mentioned the chalcopyrite and the importance of that as a copper sulfide. That tells us that copper sulfide was forming at different layers in this system. But chromite as well is also another potential indicator of what might be deeper down. So if you look at other ultramafic systems around the world, which do host these types of bodies, these are the types of indicators, the types of clue that we would be looking for to help sort of prove up an exploration model. Now, this year's drilling was all about proof of concept, and what we're looking at so far, we believe in target area A, although it was unexpected, so far it's looking very, very good for us. Now, what I pulled up here is to put into context what proof of concept might actually mean for us. Now, Kavango, to all intents and purposes, has the strategic hold over the entire Kalahari Suture Zone, because the consensus was that this region, the Proterozoic in particular, was too deep for modern exploration. It meant that this project was forgotten about for quite a long time. So what we've taken advantage of is, because of that lack of interest, we've secured pretty much the entire land package, apart from the land that's in the centre, which is broadly speaking in national parks. So from an exploration perspective, it means it's out of reach. So if we are able to prove the concept up, and we're also able to prove that we have exploration methodologies that work and can be applied across the entire region, because at the moment in the northern section of the KSZ, we're sort of roughly in this area that I'm highlighting with my cursor, then we believe that will open up the potential for bringing in one or more major partners who can take over exploration on our behalf. And in this space, this is very much our goal. We recognise that this is a huge potential project. Obviously, it takes a company like ours that's prepared to take some quite big risks in terms of exploration to prove that the concept works. But in terms of actually exploiting the whole region, we're talking about a potential new major mining centre. So the most likely or most viable strategy for us to see this developed fully will be to bring in at least one major partner. So what this now brings me to is how our exploration strategy is changing. Now, I've talked about this in a recent interview, but what we're looking at here is our current model of the Proterozoic. Now, we haven't talked about this publicly too much yet, because to be completely honest, we weren't confident it was right. Our model on the current hole suggested, and in fact, Hillary called this pretty much exactly when we decided to push deeper to the Proterozoic. Hillary told us that according to his model and the assumptions that were built into it, the Proterozoic would be at 650 meters. Now, we weren't actually that confident that that part of the model would prove to be accurate. And as it's turned out, it's been the most accurate part of the model. This is exploration. These types of twists can happen. So what we're looking at here is a view taken from for a screenshot from Hillary's system, where you can see the entire Proterozoic system. Now, unfortunately, there isn't a scale on this to give you an idea of how large a system we're talking about. But in broad terms, target area A is around here, and we're currently drilling this magnetic anomaly that is peaking towards the center up there. And this is target area B with the great red spot, which is where we're moving to for our next part of the campaign. Obviously, what we're now looking at is other shallower areas within the Proterozoic that potentially could have also acted as conduits for the Karoo age gabbros as well, 800 million years later. So just to emphasize what I said earlier on, the Karoo is still very much in play. That's still one of our main areas of interest for further exploration. But now that we've actually encountered these rocks at much shallower depth, and we've got much more confidence in this wider Proterozoic model that we'd already created, it really does mean things have taken sort of quite an unexpected, but we believe positive turn. So what we're looking at here is now what's turning into sort of a revised strategy in the KSZ. Now this map will be fairly familiar to people who've followed the story. Target area A is down here, and we're now looking at target area A south, target area C south, and we also have a target area E that we're going to start to do some more exploration over. But in the meantime, what I want to highlight is this magnetic anomaly here. Now, this is known in the north as the Great Red Spot. We talked about this in the RNS today. Now, this covers our target area B, and the Great Red Spot has been one of the primary areas of focus for historic exploration in the KSZ, simply because of its size and its shape. If you just simply, this is sort of old data that we're looking at, old magnetic data, and you can clearly see it just looks like an attractive target to go for, simply because of its size and its uniformity. Now, historically, in the Great Red Spot, in its very center, so pretty much just over this magnetic peak that's right in the middle, hole GRS1, which I mentioned at the start of this presentation, was drilled down to a depth of about 930 meters. We wrote about that in the RNS that we published earlier on. Now, hole GRS1, it only encountered Proterozoic gabbro towards the bottom of the hole from about 917 meters, because the assumption was, and Jeremy was one of the senior people in the team who made this decision to site this hole, Jeremy Brett, who's just joined the company, they pretty much picked the center of the magnetic anomaly, because at the time, the technology that was available to them, the software, the analytical software that was available to them, it gave them a fairly one-dimensional view. So they picked the center because they assumed that the center of the magnetic anomaly would be in the middle. We believe that that actually isn't the case. We believe that the magnetic anomaly is further to the north. Now, what I'm showing here is a screenshot of target B2. So this is the plate, sorry, B1. This is the plate model for target B1. This is something we've already talked about before. And what I want to demonstrate is that the models that I'm about to show you, how they built on what was already our understanding and what we'd already published in the public domain about target area B and the next phase of drilling that we're about to move into. So our aim in target area B was, first of all, to drill this conductor, this 475 by 550 meter large conductive, or fairly large conductive target, which has this 8,200 Siemens conductance reading that was picked up by a TDEM survey. Now, we'd already identified that we felt that this was in Karoo age gabbro, but what we also wanted to do was, alongside this hole, was to drill a geological hole slightly to the south that would target, obviously, the Proterozoic contact with the Karoo. So that was our original plan. As you can see here, we've got a slightly better view. This is our original Proterozoic model, and our second hole, our geological hole proposed, was this one. We were thinking about taking it down to a depth of 800 meters originally. Again, this is already in the public domain. We've talked about this a lot. But what I'm now going to show you is how our thinking has changed over the last 6 weeks, as we've obviously learned more from the drilling that we've completed in target area A, and in particular over the last 10 days, and the confidence level that we now have in our Proterozoic model. Now, we published a video with tonight's RNS, which is an interview with Jeremy and me and Alan Green. And in that video, you'll hear Jeremy give a description using this screenshot, where what Jeremy talked about was how back in the late 1990s, early 2000s, this was the view based on the technology he had available to him, that he had of the Great Red Spot. And this is why they chose to center the hole on the center of the magnetic anomaly. What Jeremy has subsequently done for us is he's created an inversion model. And the interesting thing about this is he did this independently of Hilary. So Hilary and Jeremy, both in parallel, they've run their own analysis of our model of the KSZ, of target area B, using the data that we have available, both data that we've gathered from the field ourselves, but also historic data from historic boreholes, GRS1 in particular, and also sort of historic surveys that have been flown over the region. And what Jeremy and Hilary have both done, albeit they've come at it from different directions, is they put together a model which indicates that the center of the magnetic anomaly in the Great Red Spot actually isn't in the center, it's more towards the north, which if you can see, you sort of make out here, which I'll show on the next slide, is this body that appears to be coming to surface, which is also coincidental with our TDEM target, target B1. Now, obviously we need to test all of this with drilling, and this is Jeremy's inversion. Better to watch the video that Jeremy's produced. He can give a much better description as to what you're looking at here and why it's different from what he looked at 20 years ago. But the image that's really I found most compelling is this is Hilary's latest updated model that he's done for us. Now, what Hilary believes now is that the magnetic anomaly, so this is the south, this is the north, the high of the magnetic anomaly appears to be towards the northern boundary of the Great Red Spot. So what Hilary has now decided is that the geological hole that we're going to target in this area, so this KSZ DD003, is going to target where the magnetic high appears to be closest to surface. Now, what we're looking to achieve there is to make contact with the Karoo age gabbro, make contact with the Proterozoic gabbro, and see what the source of the magnetics is. Now, that's very important because it's the source of the magnetics that could ultimately determine sort of our ability to prove the concept of the KSZ. Obviously, nickel sulfide, copper sulfide, they're very magnetic bodies. And if it turns out that these magnetic highs, these magnetic anomalies are coincidental with sulfide deposits of some description, that would obviously be a transformational event for Kavango. And at the same time, from this image, from this slice that you can see, this is our target B2. These are the plate models that have been created that give the orientation at which the hole should be designed to intercept the conductor. And as you can see, it's sitting right on the edge of where we believe the magnetic high peaks. Now, obviously, we can't know for certain what this is. There are a number of potential other bodies that there could be underground. You can only ever know once you actually test a target like this with drilling. But with what we've learned so far, we're feeling very good about this one. So we're looking forward to mobilizing up to target area B and drilling what is currently our highest priority target in the company. So to finish off, and I welcome any questions after this event. I realise I've just given a lot of information, barely pausing for breath. I know that there will probably be some people who have some questions about what we're doing in the Copper Belt. We announced on Friday that we've renewed our licenses in the LVR JV. There'll be more news flow up on the LVR JV in the not too distant future, together with new marketing materials that we're going to publish. But when we talked in the RNS about the license we're most excited about, it's this one up here, which is neighbouring very close to the Banana Zone deposit, which is this square that you can see here. And our primary target is slightly to the east of the main highway. Now, we're very excited about this one. It's just on the other side of Garnsey Ridge, and it's a really interesting looking analogue. And once we've got some media prepared, obviously we'll be putting that out in the public domain, but that's also another very high priority, I should say, drill target for us. We're just waiting on our environmental management plan. There have been delays to getting that because of the COVID situation in Botswana. We've just found out today that apparently there's one person who's processing EMPs at the moment, so that's why the backlog has built up. But for what we've been told verbally, it should really be any day now, maybe next week. So hopefully we'll get that very soon, and we'll be able to provide a more comprehensive update on our efforts in the KCB. Meanwhile, we have the joint venture with Power Metal Resources in a company called Kanye Resources, which is a privately held PLC. Now, these orange licenses, this is all the ground that Kanye currently holds. The areas that we're most excited about, of course, are in the original two licenses, which are these two here, prospecting licenses, where we've done a lot of soil sampling work, we've flown airborne surveys. We've got some very interesting looking drill targets, but we're also very encouraged by these licenses up on the western edge of Botswana, right on the Namibian border. We haven't yet been able to commence any field work out there, but from what we've looked at in terms of the sort of regionally available data, there's some very interesting targets for us to go out and start immediate field exploration as soon as we're able to get out there. So the Kanye JV is going great guns at the moment. We're very happy to be working with Power Metal Resources, and as soon as we can start drilling the existing targets and conducting more comprehensive field work, then of course we'll be looking to accelerate this project in the not too distant future. So that's the end of the presentation. Do I have any questions?
Okay, good, thank you. So Ben, can you give us some sort of timescales in terms of the when the results will come back from the labs? Can you give us an idea of that?
So oh, I'm getting some feedback there. No, our original plan, Jason, was that we were going to save cost, we were going to wait until we'd finished at target area B, drilling the holes here, and then send all of the samples off in one batch. However, given what we've hit now last week, we're actually changed that plan. So we're going to be sending all of the samples that we're sending for assay testing in target area A off as soon as we can. The cores are currently being cut. We expect cores should all be cut by the end of next week, and we'll be able to have the thin sections ready to send off for lab testing. In terms of how long it's going to take, it's a little bit out of our hands because there are two things to consider. First of all, there's the situation in South Africa, both COVID and political, is a little bit tricky at the moment, but also the mining sector is, with metal prices doing what they're doing, the lab space, just isn't much availability. So we obviously will get it done as quickly as we can, but I wouldn't like to sort of commit to a firm timeline because it is a bit out of our hands. All we can do is get the core cut as quickly as we can, get it over to Johannesburg, and do what we can to get the test results back.
Right. Okay. And you talked about you bringing in a partner. What sort of point do you think? I mean, have you had any approaches so far, or is it too early to go and do that? So what can you comment?
So I've been in a number of meetings with very large firms with their senior exploration people responsible for exploration in Africa. What they've all asked us for consistently, they've pretty much the same message. Really interesting concepts, interesting use of technology, really pretty looking diagrams, lots of lovely colors, all looks jolly nice, but come back to us when you've got some interesting rocks to show us. And that's pretty much been the response from all of them. We think we've now got those rocks. I brought this photo back up on screen. Everybody that we've shown this to, it seems it's caused a reasonable degree of excitement, I'd say. Now, whether or not we're looking at mineralization at this stage, I really couldn't say. We've had feedback that we certainly should be testing for PGEs, which may or may not be visible to the naked eye. But at this point, this is why part of the reason that we're looking to rush through the testing of these rocks in particular, because once we actually know we've got those assay test results, if we're able then to go back to the people that we've been talking to previously and say, right, look, we've got definitive evidence of mineralization within the system. This is the model that's enabled us to get to that mineralization. So the model of the Proterozoic, which I showed you in this screen, we have an exploration strategy that we believe is viable, and the depths are also within range, and this is how it can be rolled out. I think we should at that point have a fairly compelling pitch, but it will all come down to the quality of the results of the assay tests.
Okay, good. That's good. Yeah, and you're drilling down to about 1,000 meters. I mean, is there any value in going below that, or would it be too expensive to do?
So no. So at this point, it's the technical limit of the rig. So the rig that we currently have can only safely get us down to about 1,000 meters. It could possibly push on to 1,050, but the drillers have told us that really we should call it a day at 1,000 meters just to be safe. So in terms of future exploration, we're going to do downhole EM on this. We're confident that we can actually run the downhole EM. The challenge at the moment isn't so much the probe, it's more finding a winch that's long enough. So we're looking at a solution where we'll use the driller's winch to take the probe down into the hole. So it's a bit of a creative solution, but it'll be interesting to see what comes back from that. If we find that there are more targets, if we even find that there are deeper targets, then of course we'll look at what we can do to drill that. But from an economic perspective, yeah, I mean, sort of going deeper from this level, could well make sense.
Good. And the appointments you made today, they're non-board positions, are they? As I remember.
Correct. Yeah. So they're non-board. They're all executive positions at this stage. Right. So these are the guys really who are sort of helping us to drive forward our operations. I think one of the biggest challenges has been with Kavango is that we have been very understaffed. David Smith obviously is our non-executive chairman. He's just retired recently. He's a career lawyer. Fantastic guy. built a really good working relationship with him. We're very different characters. You know, he's obviously from a legal background, I'm much more entrepreneurial, but it's been a good balance between the two of us. But there's really only so much, you know, involvement that you get from a non-executive chairman on a day-to-day basis. Mike and Michael are both over 70, so they both, you know, they still both contribute, but again, there's really only so much that you can expect. Hilary works like a Trojan. I mean, Hilary's work ethic, I think, is even stronger than mine. So he's a fantastic asset to have in the business. But where we were lacking really was that sort of senior guidance on the ground. And that's what Tips and John bring to us. They've really sort of bedded into the company extremely quickly. And with those two guys, one taking care of the sort of the commercial and the strategic relationships, and John taking care of the more operational side of things, I think we're going to start seeing much more news flow coming out of Kavango as we really ramp up operations. And then in the background, having Jeremy's geophysical expertise has been a significant boost to the company. So, you know, he's been able to work already very closely with Hilary. And as I said earlier in the presentation, you know, he's brought in a number of quite key contacts for us. Sorry, the lights have gone again. Yeah, I mean, he's sort of really going to help us augment our exploration strategy as we move forward.
Okay, good. Thank you for that. So, are there any further questions from anyone else?
No. Is there a chat room?
No, I suppose, Ben, I mean, it's great to see the rate of knots and the momentum that you're generating in Kavango, and particularly from where it had come from a year ago. I suppose just for all of us, sort of what are the 2 or 3 key things, if we take nothing else away from where Kavango is at the moment, that you'd kind of like for us to stick in our heads as, you know, as investors and shareholders and, you know, even just generally market participants?
Okay, well, first of all, Cam, it's a good question. So first of all, the quality of our projects. A big part of our pitch is that we have genuinely world-class projects, both in this Kalahari Suture Zone and in the Copper Belt. We've got in the Copper Belt, we believe we've got a very good chance of making at least one major copper discovery, if not more than that. We've got some really great ground to go for, and John in particular, one of the big reasons that John was excited to come and work with us, because obviously someone of John's caliber, he had a lot of offers on the table with the space being as active as it is. One of the things that really attracted him to the business was the Copper Belt in particular, and the prospects of making discoveries there. In the Suture Zone, obviously it's blue sky upside. You know, if we can find a model that works, it could be phenomenal for the business, but of course it's very high risk as well. So first point is quality of projects. They're very exciting projects with huge potential upside, and which we believe is realizable. Secondly, we are a serious exploration company, so we put every pound that we can into the ground. You guys have provided us with fantastic support over the last 12 months. You led the November 2020 financing, and you exclusively did the financing earlier this summer. The money that you guys have kindly raised for us, that your customers, your clients have trusted us with, we put every penny of that we can into the ground and improving our operations. So for me, it's very important that our shareholders, our investors, know that when they trust us with their money, we're going to use that money to the best of our ability. Finally, I think it's the investor relations. Now, I mean, obviously, I don't want to be too conceited here, but I've been working with Kavango since April 2020. That's when the company's shares hit an all-time low of 0.8 pence. And if you look at the company's share price performance since April last year, you can see the effect, you know, what I'm bringing into the business. Now, it's not just simply a promote, it's not just simply marketing. I'm looking to lead this business into the next phase of its growth with the genuine vision of becoming a world-class minerals exploration firm in Botswana. So I think the energy with which we're approaching our projects, the energy with which we're promoting ourselves, the energy with which we're investing into Botswana and really trying to make a name for ourselves, I think really sets us apart from pretty much all of our competitors who still, if I'm really honest, are a bit on the sleepy side. So we're aggressive, we're lean, we're hungry. We really are going to make this business a success.
Thanks, Ben. Yeah, actually, I think as an overarching thing, your passion really comes through. I mean, obviously, we've met in person as well, and it certainly does then too. But, you know, in what you're explaining, it comes through. And at the end of the day, there'll be positive things and some setbacks. And as long as you've got that drive and determination, we're in a good position. So that's why we're pleased to be part of Kavango and kind of backing, you and the team and the vision.
Well, thank you, Cameron. And again, like, we really do, appreciate your support. We're very, very serious about making this company work. And I think, as you said, these aren't only words. You can see from the news flow that we've had, the progress that we've made, what we've been able to report to the market. There's genuine action that's underpinning all of this. And yeah, there will be setbacks along the way. I'm sure there will. But in terms of our overall model, I have a great deal of confidence in it. I have a huge amount of confidence in our team as well. With the changes that we've made in the business over the last 8 months, I think we've got the right management structure in place, we've got the right leadership, and we've got the right people in the senior roles. And now it's a case of us building out the rest of the model over the next 6 months.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks, Ben.
Thank you.
Ben, could I, Chris Ells, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, hi, Chris.
Yeah, hi, Ben. Well, congratulations, very good presentation. It's great to have sort of young, energetic blood in the Kavango. Just 2 questions I've got. One is the drilling sort of aspect. Could you just give a snapshot of how the drilling JV works with Lindale and Equity, and the extent to which they have got the available capacity for the considerable amount of work that you've got underway and going forward?
Yeah, it's a good question, Chris. So we've obviously talked, I didn't actually mention it in the presentation, I should have done, but there's just so much to talk about with the business. We obviously talked at the time of the fundraise about this joint venture that we're looking to set up with Equity Drilling. Now, discussions are ongoing about that. We're putting together a 3-year business model at the moment, with a view to setting up this JV, which the guys from Equity Drilling will operate on our behalf. They have the capacity in country. There's 1 rig in particular that is available already. We're looking at a second multi-purpose rig as well, which we're building into the model. But obviously we've been slightly overtaken by events, because when we first started the conversations with Equity Drilling, we were only planning on a 2-hole campaign with 2 holes down to about 500 to 600 meters. Obviously that's now turned into a more extensive campaign, with the latest hole obviously going down to 1,000 meters. So all of our operational focus has really been on delivering that successfully, but we have continued working with Equity Drilling in the background. So what my hope is that we just need to get the current phase of drilling out of the way, because it is quite a significant, and I'm sure as you're aware, it's quite a significant engineering challenge to operate in this part of the world, not least because of these loose sediments and sands that you have to get through at the top of the hole, and then the depth that we're going to. So we'll get to the end of this drilling campaign, and then we'll look to tie something up with Equity Drilling, I think, towards the end of this year. That would be my best guess.
Excellent. And the second question, just apropos that, in terms of cash, what is the sort of the understanded? You can only raise 20% of your market cap within every 12 months or something. So where's the country currently stand on in terms of fundraising?
So as you can see on this screen, I've changed this from cash to working capital, because we obviously have a number of Power Metal shares that we recently exercised warrants, but our working capital position is about £2.5 million at the moment. It's obviously down about 400,000 since I last presented 2 months ago, this figure. That's mainly been with drilling costs and other exploration costs. So we've had some front-loaded costs. So for example, we bought new vehicles for the teams. So at the moment we have plenty of money to see us through well into next year. We've obviously got that warrant bank as well that we're expecting will start to come through. Those warrants are all cleansed. In terms of our headroom, we've used up most of our headroom now. So we obviously did the placing back in July with First Equity. We've issued shares to Spectral Geophysics as part of the strategic partnership that we signed with them back in April. So we don't have much headroom at the moment. So that means if we do come to raise money again, we will have to issue a prospectus. But at the moment, we've got no plans to raise money. At the moment, we don't need to. We've got more than enough in the tank to see us through the current drill campaign, see us through the assay testing, see us through drilling in the KCB, and also, which I think people have forgotten about, see us through drilling in Dittel. So as things stand today, absolutely no plans for a fundraise. I mean, if I were to guess, I couldn't see one until well into next year.
And the warrants, I think I took part in some which are 4.25, is that right? Mm-hmm. Going back in November. So are a lot of the warrants in the money as such? Or?
Yeah, so we've got, at the moment, we've got the remaining 2.5p warrants. We've got about £1 million worth of those that are obviously comfortably in the money. We've got about £3 million worth of the 4.25s. We've only had a few of those that have been exercised so far. Those are obviously in the money with the share price up at 5.6p at the moment. And then we've of course got the 8.5p warrants from the last placing. So if we're able to keep delivering the results that we've been delivering so far, and if we have anything like the success that we've had up at target area B, that we've had down at target area A so far, I'm feeling pretty comfortable about our cash position and also our landing, sort of our pathway to more funds as well.
Well done. Thanks, Ben. Very good.
Thank you. Any further questions for anyone else? Okay, looks like no. Right. Okay, that's good. Okay, well, that's very interesting, Ben. So I think we've I think it's the PDF presentation on here. This is a new one. Is that right, Ben? Is that on the website at the moment, or will that be put on afterwards?
It's not on the website, but what we will do is we tend to publish images from these presentations on our Twitter feed. So
right, okay,
with some context. Each time I give a presentation, it's a unique presentation. So
right.
I'm happy to send it over to you, Jason, if you want to make it available to your clients, because this is all
good. Yeah, if you can
domain.
send over them, then we can get that sent out. That'd be very useful for people. That's very good. Right, great. Okay, that's all sounds very exciting, and certainly we look forward to the sort of further news flow coming out from yourself, and looks all very good. So thank you very much everyone for joining us on this evening's presentation, and so we'll send over the presentation. And also links for the recording, which we've done as well. That's
absolutely
very good. Yeah, thanks.
And just one final thing, if you do get a chance to look at the RNS, there's about a 10-minute video presentation that I gave with Jeremy Brett. I think it would be well worth, if you have to spare 10 minutes, be well worth watching that.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, good. Okay. Yeah, thank you very much. That's great. Okay.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Thanks for your time, everybody.
Ben, thanks everyone.
Thank you.